Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's Weekly Energy Boost. My name is Elisheva, and I'm here with David, and we are talking today about altered states and ancient insights, drugs, plant medicine, and spirituality. I'm not sure we can cover all of those things in 30 minutes, but we're going to do our best. We're talking this week about really how darkness fuels our spiritual journey and the different alternatives that are out there. What does Kabbalah say about them? And how can we grow and learn from those insights, not only this week, but anytime? Weekly Energy Boost is a 7-day spiritual weather forecast where David and I, and sometimes our guests, offer our listeners the most practical and powerful wisdom and tools to help you navigate the coming 7 days. We do that by gleaning through the wisdom of Kabbalah so that you walk away with powerful tools and deep wisdom that'll help you navigate any day of the week, any week of the year. And this week is no different. We're really focusing on how we can have more of a light-filled and mystical experience, powerful. How can we experience the light on a daily basis? And what's the role of drugs, plant medicine, etc. in that? I thought, David, that for me, the thing that stands out is what compels people. Why are some people drawn to have these experiences? I mean, I personally am not attracted to it at all, but I know that there's a lot of people that say that they've had very powerful experiences, that it's helped them reach levels of understanding and feeling of connectedness and love and whatnot. To me, I think the conversation begins way before that, way before the actual experience, and more how, I think it's called scarcity culture, how everything around us is set up to make us feel like we're missing something. When you look at the media, marketing, everybody, it's so funny to think about it because we go through it so mindlessly, but you look at commercials today or ads in magazines, if people still look at them, ads on the internet, I guess, and everybody is gorgeous and thin, and their kitchens are white and sparkling, and everybody's looking lovingly into their eyes, and everybody's skipping on the beach in bikini. Like suddenly unconsciously we look at those images. I'm thinking about one. It's actually quite funny. It's an ad for, I think it's the San Diego tourism or something. It's like promoting San Diego, and everybody is so gorgeous and so happy. And I'm thinking, have I ever gone on vacation and been that happy? It's not from a point of view of something is wrong with me, but the fact that their fulfillment, I can have that fulfillment if I drive to San Diego, but the fact that they're implying I don't have it, and that so much of sales today is set up in such a way to make me feel like I am missing something, and somebody sells the solution. Somebody sells the key to that. So why am I starting with that? Because I think that there is a perception that I cannot achieve my fullest potential on my own, that I don't have everything I need to be as enlightened and connected to the light force of the Creator as I can be. And I think that's where the conversation begins. Why is it that we feel we need external support, stimulus, chemicals to awaken something in us, which according to Kabbalah, we all have naturally?
Yeah, and I think we need to acknowledge one thing, which is there are a lot of people on different sides of the aisle about this topic, and chemicals or drugs, recreational or not, there's a lot of different definitions out there. Like, for example, what about taking melatonin to sleep versus taking NyQuil versus taking an Ambien, right? When does it stop?
Let's have that conversation.
Right? And it's a conversation. It's
a
conversation. So I think that there's so many different ways of looking at this, and it's not black and white, and everyone has a different perspective about it. So I think what's important is to focus on the framework of how energy works and allow people to make their own decisions. What the Kabbalists explain, which is always the most powerful thing, to kind of go back to what is the original explanation of how our universe operates and how energy operates. This idea that the purpose of each soul has been to have an unfettered, open connection to the light of the Creator. That affinity of form that you achieve with the Creator allows this endless energy to come into your life and remove darkness. And that translates to both physical, emotional, and spiritual benefits and fulfillment. So what we learn in Kabbalah is that if you're connected to the light, the miracles come. The darkness goes away. The questions go away. The answers come. The fulfillment in every area of your life comes when you're connected to the light. This is the ultimate prize. This is the ultimate goal. And one of the explanations that I've learned is that you have to kind of look at connection as two different ways. Number one, the goal of the soul is to have this relationship with the Creator and have this connection. However, we also know, and the Creator knows as He designed this world, that connection is not going to happen automatically, that there are stages to it. So what the Creator has done is encapsulated His light, this light force, into the physicality of this world. It's encapsulated the light in food. That's why when we eat food, we have pleasure. Encapsulated in sexual pleasure. Encapsulated in power and respect. That's why people run for governor, they run for mayor, or they run for president, because there's something about, even though you don't get paid well, and even though you get to a place where everybody hates you and is against you and it's very hard, like why go through all that effort to run for president? Because by achieving this position of power, there's this great light that's revealed, this great pleasure, this great fulfillment that is revealed because you have all this energy now. But this is all the light of the Creator encapsulated in these shells that are just momentary in their pleasure. For example, when you eat food, you taste the light, but for a moment. When you reach a place of power, or when you find true love, there is this revelation of light, but then the work begins. It's not like a light that just keeps coming constantly. And sexual pleasure is the same. It's a high, and then there's a low. So people who are chasing pleasures in this physical world, they're just jumping from one shell to another, one spark to another. Now, the Creator gave us these sparks to sustain us. But the analogy I like to use is like when you go to Costco and there's samples, you go to the sample booth, you eat a sample. But the purpose of eating the sample is that if you like what you tasted, you go and buy the full product. But what happens when you go to the sample station, you like the sample, and you ask for another sample? And in fact, you just stay there all day eating samples. All of a sudden, there's a shame that occurs, and everyone starts giving you a dirty look.
And you need to wear a disguise to get the second sample.
Yeah, then you start to need to hide, and you become inauthentic because you're trying to find a way to get more samples, but you don't want to pay for the main product.
The full thing.
The whole point of the samples was to lead you to the main product. But some people are just addicted to the sampling. They go to Costco and they go from booth to booth eating samples and saying, that's my life, that's my fulfillment. But the fulfillment is much greater. And we do that in this physical world. We're just sampling the Creator. We're sampling the Creator in drugs. We're sampling the Creator in food. We're sampling the Creator in sexual relationships. We're sampling the Creator in different things because we're not willing to put in the work, or we don't know that there's something greater than a sample. We think that this is a store of samples. We don't even think that if I go to the freezer, the full product is there. So what I want to really establish for all of us is the great prize that exists. So the drug's good, drug's bad. Let's look at it as it's a sample. And I'm not saying that you need to sample it, but in everything in this world that you feel good about or you gain pleasure or even enlightenment from, you have to know that that is just a small spark of what you can obtain without that physical modality. You need to know that it exists. You need to crave it. You need to pray for it. And as it says, whatever you ask for from the Creator comes. If you ask to get close to the Creator comes close to you. So this is the first, I wanted to establish just kind of how energy works in our world. It's not a good or bad. It's stepping stones to something that is ultimately greater.
One of the reasons I think this conversation is challenging is because we don't have a definitive text that says this is good, this is not good, this is okay, this is not okay. There is very little in the wisdom of Kabbalah that is so black and white like that. And I think our tendency as human beings is to desire black and white, when in reality, everything is gray. And it's really up to us to create our own. We talked about creating our own rule book, but the really is to find what resonates with us and to feel deeply and completely connected to that truth. The Zohar itself, which is the main text of Kabbalah, doesn't really say much about drugs in the recreational sense. It talks about drugs in a medicinal sense. There's actually a beautiful section in the Zohar that says that all healing comes from the plant world, or it can come from the plant world. The reason it doesn't, the reason we do not know which plant cures what, is because if we did, humanity would worship the plants and not the creator. And to me, there's also a very powerful message there that has nothing to do with medicine. It's about the fact that we as human beings were like insects to the light, right? Literally, we're always looking for the new, shiny, exciting, cheaper, updated, upgraded. If we knew what do they call it? Where the Holy Grail was, or where the fountain of life was, we'd all go. The reason we can't is because it would make us forget who we really are and what the purpose is, which is kind of what David was saying before, that we get so consumed with the samples, we forget what we were there shopping for. And so there is so much to be said about the value of medicine. And I think it's funny because we used to teach in our courses the whole idea that as we get closer to pain, my goodness, as we get closer to the end of pain and suffering, as our world transitions into a better place, there's going to be innovations in science and medicine. And we see it happening all the time, right? People who, diseases that would once cut a person's life short, now there are medicines and therapies and techniques that help extend a person's lifespan regardless. I mean, there are people who literally live with cancer for decades after their diagnosis, whereas before, right, and without those technologies, they would live a much shorter life. That's just an example. So we need to understand that there is a direct correlation between the elevation of humanity's consciousness and the resources that we're afforded. There is a direct correlation between the advancements in technology and the advancements in consciousness. However, the question always goes back to why are we doing it? And this is not just about drugs or Advil or, any time in our lives that we're looking for relief of some sort. And I do believe that a lot of this conversation revolves around relief. There's a lot of people that at the end of the day have something that they do or they partake in for relief from stress, from worry, from tension. I know it's a funny thing to say, but I know people, and I think we all know people, that have used different natural remedies for dealing with medical issues and challenges that maybe 50 years ago would be unheard of. The point is, anytime we do something, we always have to be connected to the why. What's my intention? Why am I doing this? And if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of the time it's to escape or it is for relief. And the constant accessing of that release valve, or I guess it could be a relief valve, doesn't get us closer to a solution, to long-term fulfillment. It's simply adding pressure to dealing with the actual challenge. Maybe there's challenges at home that we'd rather not deal with, so we have an escape valve. Maybe there's challenges at work that we have to decompress from, so we have our escape valve. We're not talking here about and maybe we should have put a little disclaimer in this episode. This episode does not replace medical care, expertise, seeking professional advice. We're just simply sharing some of the underlying mindsets and consciousness that drive this conversation, the conversation around drugs and medicinal treatments. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of the pharmaceutical industry is really dependent on us feeling like we're broken or we're weak or we can't do it on our own. So I want to make it clear, we're not saying if a person needs to take insulin, they shouldn't take insulin because their body should produce it. No, the reason that insulin exists is so that people whose bodies are weak in, I don't know, the pancreas can overcome that. And the same as with mental health, literally any physical symptom or system. The point I'm trying to make, and I wish David would just interrupt me already, is that the body has its weaknesses or its challenges for a spiritual reason, but there's also solutions for those things. We're not talking about not taking medicine because we want to overcome it with spiritual measures. We're more talking about exploring alternative experiences with plant medicine or what have you, and inducing spiritual states versus things that are medically necessary. I hope that came out clearly.
When people listen to us, I think at the end of the day, they're asking, tell me bottom line what I should do. And obviously it's never that black and white, but there is a bottom line here, which is the clarity of what you're looking for, of what to engage in or with in this physical world, comes from the absolute truth that you need a solid relationship with the Creator that is your primary relationship, not your secondary, but your primary. And what does that mean? What does that look like? Number one, do you know that the Creator exists and the Creator wants to speak with you and give you everything? Like, you need to know that. Even if you fake it, you need to know that it doesn't hurt you, it only serves you, and it opens up your vessel to receive. That's number one. Number two, prayer out loud, speaking out loud, as silly as that might seem, and as uncomfortable. You have to know it's uncomfortable only because we were conditioned since we were young or even past life that this is a religious ideal and it's something that is not for me. Speaking out loud is another way to energetically build a vessel for the light of the Creator to come in. That's how you build that relationship. I talk to so many people and they say, David, I've tried everything. I can't break through this. I can't break through that. I said, well, have you talked to the Creator? Oh, no, I haven't done that. They do it and within 2 days it opens up. So talking out loud for 1 minute, for 5 minutes,
Can I interrupt
for 1 hour. Yes.
If you want to witness, how does that look in real life? The movie you need to see or the show you need to see? Fiddler on the Roof. Did you ever see it?
I did not expect you to say that.
I know you didn't. Did you ever see it?
I haven't even seen it.
Okay, so that's your homework
It was
assignment.
like too religious for me at the time. I think
you're ready. I think you're ready now, David. Basically, the main character spends the entire time talking to God, like as though he's a companion walking alongside him on the street. And he even says things like, "Are you kidding me?" But he's talking to God.
Oh, that's nice.
It's comical, but it really does illustrate this idea that the goal is for us to feel as close to the Creator as though he's our best buddy walking down the street with us on a Sunday afternoon. Continue.
Okay. All right, beautiful. So that's the second thing, is having that conversation regularly, as much as possible, formal or informal. It does not matter. There are no rules to that. The third thing is what we teach in Kabbalah 1, which is affinity of form. You get close to something that you have affinity of form with. And we learn in the first class just the whole idea of pausing and not being reactive. When our desire for instant gratification comes up, when we have doubts and fears and lack, and then we want to respond to that lack in a way that makes us feel comfortable in the moment, what we're doing essentially is we're becoming unlike the Creator, because we know the Creator has no lack, has no fear, and is full, has no self-worth issues. The Creator is 100% solid. So when we're not solid, we have lack of affinity. Now, stuff comes up. That's natural. That's organic. That's not a bad thing. But it's how you respond and how you react to what comes up that will allow for a connection or a disconnection from the light of the Creator. So I would say those three things, first and foremost. And by the way, you know your relationship with the Creator is number one and not number two or number three when you're put in a difficult situation. When you're put in a difficult situation, what's your go-to? What is the way you solve problems? Is it by being manipulative? Is it by being controlling? Is it by leveraging your networking or your charisma? Or do you bully your way to a solution? Or do you take a pause and realize, hey, it's all about the light. It's all about the light of the Creator right now. That's how I'm going to solve my problem. That's how I'm going to get out of this situation. And then when you have that as your number one, as your anchor, as your primary, the light of the Creator then shows you solutions in this physical world and guides you. So if a person does take medicine, but it's because it came as a secondary option from prayer, from transformation, from a desire to connect to the light, then there's protection there. But if I'm running to energy in this physical world as my primary go-to, as my quick fix, whatever I'm connecting to, even if it feels good for a second, it will ultimately wear off and disconnect me because it is not connected to the source. Something is connected to, that's what people say, well, isn't drugs connected to the source? Everything depends on what your relationship is with the Creator to begin with. And when you really have an honest relationship with the Creator and you're letting go of your agenda and you're not tricking yourself or manipulating yourself, you will receive messages. You will be guided as to what is the right thing in life. So, that's the energy. I think ultimately the energy of this week is to release us from the idol worship concept of us being addicted to things physically in this world. If you feel you need something to be happy, you got to look at it. You got to look at it. And you will be tested and challenged because that thing will be taken away temporarily to show you that you are not putting the Creator first. How do we know? You're sad when you don't have it. You're bitter when you don't have it, like we spoke weeks before. You are dependent on it. So whatever you're dependent on must be taken away even for a moment to show you that the Creator is not there.
So powerful, because before knowing what David was going to say, I was thinking one important thing to bring up also is that we are here, humanity, people, we are created and we are hardwired for connection, right? There's a whole wealth of knowledge out there about attachment and how important it is when we're babies to feel secure, and that we're constantly trying to connect with other people. We might do it in ways that do the opposite sometimes, but we feel our most fulfilled when we feel connected, whether it's with another person, a mission, a project, the Creator. If we look at our lives, our greatest joys come from moments of connection. And what we find when we look to things, and I don't want to just use drugs, by the way, I think one of the most powerful drugs out there today are screens, right? There's research done that says that, using our phones, using tablets, devices, it has the same effect on the brain as actual drugs. And it awakens the addiction centers in the brain. So that's why it's so difficult for you to tear your phone away from your kid or tear the iPad away from them, because their brains light up the same way they did if they were doing cocaine. And so part of the conversation also, I think it's important to look at that point, not only connection to the Creator, but connection to others. And I know that there's a lot of people who would say, yes, when I do drugs, I feel much more connected to other people. But what I find is that the people who will say that, they feel connected to certain people, but not to others. That there is a dimension of fragmentation and separation that is created. So if you're doing something, if that thing that makes you feel good isolates you, separates you, breaks you off from parts of yourself or parts of your life, that should also raise a red flag. And we are not here, you know us, if you've been listening to us for any period of time, we're not here to preach or to talk down to anybody. This is just, these questions have come up for so many years from our listeners. If we can talk about it, and we've kind of skirted the issue different times, not because we don't want to address it, as hopefully you can see today. There just isn't a whole lot of Kabbalistic conversation around it, aside from the idea that if we're using drugs or any other crutch to feel connected, it's making us disconnected. It creates what we learn in Kabbalah when it's called bread of shame. It is that feeling, the Costco metaphor, we haven't earned it. We haven't created it. We haven't paid for it. It's not really ours. And so the challenge with that Kabbalistically is simply that the reason we were put on the planet is to remove that feeling, to create a sense of ownership. And I'm the cause. I've created my connection, when many of those things have the opposite effect and prevent us. It's almost like you spend your waking, 12 hours a day being in the state of cause and ownership, and then 2 hours a day receiving without making that effort. It's definitely creates a bit of a clash, I would say, in intention and in action. So we want to be mindful of that as well. Any last thoughts, David, before we close? That's all. Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there would be like, you wanted to hear the juicy stuff. The Kabbalists didn't do these things at least they didn't write about doing it.
We'll save that for another, the stuff that Elisheva and I do, we'll save that for another time.
Yes, exactly. So, that was awesome. Thank you, David. Thank you for listening. We want to remind you that Weekly Energy Boost is available on all podcast platforms, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. We have a website, weeklyenergyboost.com, where we put all different kinds of things that we want our listeners to know about. And you can also click the donate button there and support our podcast, as well as like, rate, review, and most importantly, share this episode. I know that while the title is controversial, the content might not have been so. So it may be something that you feel comfortable sharing with people that you love that could use a different spin on things. We'll see you next week. Have a fabulous one. We will see you next week. We want you to have a fabulous one. And thanks for listening to the Weekly Energy Boost.